In this video, we're going to go over a concept called friction. Friction is a concept related to customer relations or really applicable to any customer or prospect interaction you ever have. Okay. So friction, more or less, is anything that gets in the way of the end goal of a prospect. Okay. So the concept of friction is going to be applicable to almost any step of the interaction that we have with a prospect or customer. From the quote process to the sales process, scheduling, transaction, etc. Okay, it's going to be relevant or pertinent to any of those touch points, and our goal is to limit how much friction that prospect or customer feels, because it decreases ultimately the likelihood of them going forward, accepting the quote, scheduling the job, etc. Okay, so as it pertains to the quote process, we want to make it as easy as possible, right? The goal pertaining to friction is ultimately, in that context, to limit any of the friction that might be relevant to that quote process. So, for instance, how we can make it as easy as possible for that prospect is to ask as few of questions as possible to understand the scope of work accurately, and also give them instructions of what they should expect next, right? So when it comes to the quote process, we do not want to take too long to respond or too long to answer, right? If we take too long to answer or respond, that's the concept of speed to lead, right? We need to be quick to reply to their inquiry, be the first company that responds to that lead, because speed to lead is the biggest variable that contributes to, the likelihood of them accepting that quote. Whoever's the first company to get back to them is probably going to be the one that accepts or gets approved to do that job for them. Okay, so we do not want to take too long to respond or answer to their inquiry. We do not want to have too long of a conversation. And really what that means is we don't want to ask them too many questions, right? Oftentimes a customer, that first question that they're going to ask is, I want gutter cleaning. How much does it charge, right? We can't accurately give them a quote without asking them a few questions to understand the scope of work, but we don't want to overburden them with too many questions. So kind of a balance, okay? Next step in the customer journey as they get through the quote process is the sales process, right? Now at this point, we're ready to present them options. And how we can do that best is give them more or less a forced close with a few options, right? So the forced close, as discussed in other videos, is oftentimes going to be formatted, the top rung option, the middle rung option, or the first rung option. Different service options for whatever service they might inquire about, gutter cleaning or whatever. Which works best for you, man? They all work for us. That's why we're presenting them. We don't say that part, but clearly all of them work for us. That's why we presented them to that customer. And they all work for us. So which one works best for you? Okay. So we want to give them a forced close. They're more likely in that context to choose one of the options, instead of saying yes or no. If we ask them a yes or no question, or just gave them one option, right? Single option aversion. If we give them one option. And when it comes to the sales process, right? This is really true for any of these steps in the process, right? We do not want to take too long to respond or answer. We don't want to give them too many service options and contribute to a concept called choice overload or decision fatigue, right? When you go to the store and there's too many options for something, sometimes there's too great of a mental burden when it comes to weighing and deciding which of the options is best. And sometimes you walk out with deciding that, I'm not going to get any of these because it's becoming too big of a burden for me to choose, right? So we don't want to take too long to respond or answer to give them that quote, which options they can decide to move forward with. We don't want to give them too many service options. We just want to give them a couple options that work for us, give them a first close, and again, which works best for you. Same thing kind of applies to the scheduling process. We want to give them a few options in the form of a forced close. And again, ask them, date A, date B, or date C, which works best for you. Right, give them a couple options that all of them work for us. So let's have them decide out of these options which works best for them. And again, we don't want to take too long to respond to them, right? If they want to schedule the appointment, we want to get back to them as soon as we can, because if we take too long, they're going to get frustrated with our unresponsiveness, and they're going to go get a quote. They're going to get pitched. They're going to go through the same process, and maybe they're going to go with a different vendor because we didn't get back to them in time. So. Last thing pertaining to scheduling is we don't want to schedule too far out, right? Some customers want to get the thing done. And if we give them a date too far out, some customers are hesitant to do that, right? So we just need to be attentive to if they have a deadline to get this task done by, or if they actually want to get it done, on a further date scheduled out. The last thing that's pertinent to our customer journey is the transaction process, right? For instance, like how do we collect payment? So again, we want to give them a few options in the form of a forced close and just ask, which works best for you. So that's the concept of friction. It more or less is something that gets in the way of the end goal of a process. For us, that could apply in the quote process, the sales process, scheduling, transaction, really any customer touch point that we have. So that's the concept of friction. Try to minimize it in context of any prospect or customer interactions.